On a bitter winter night in Denver, Jack Morgan finds a wounded female Navy SEAL bleeding in the snow, a pregnant German shepherd shivering and huddled next to her. No badge, no backup, just a desperate whisper, "Don't call the police. They'll find us." Jack thinks he's saving two strangers, not realizing he's walking into a manhunt, a betrayal within the Navy, and a war that will force him to protect a family he never expected. Before we begin, let us know where you're watching from, and if this story touched your heart, subscribe to see more. The winter wind pushed through Denver's back alleys like a cold blade cutting between dimly lit garages. Jack Morgan, 42 years old and carrying more scars inside than on his skin, walked with measured, heavy steps across the frozen asphalt behind the auto shop he watched over at night. He wore his usual faded green military coat, frayed at the cuffs, smelling faintly of engine oil and wood smoke, an old companion he trusted more than most people. Jack was a tall, broad-shouldered man, with a square jaw shadowed by 3 days of stubble, dark hair streaked with early gray, and eyes the color of storm clouds. Eyes that had once studied battlefields, but now studied silence. His gait was steady, but his mind was always listening, always preparing, as if danger were simply late to an appointment. War had carved caution into his bones. Beside him trotted Thor, his 5-year-old German shepherd with thick black and tan fur and a sharp, intelligent gaze that mirrored the man walking him. Thor wasn't just a dog. He was Jack's second heartbeat. Muscular, disciplined, fiercely loyal, Thor carried both the posture and soul of an ex-military working dog, though he had retired early after a mission gone wrong. The slight scar above his left eye told that story. Thor rarely growled, but when he did, Jack paid attention. Tonight he felt uneasy. The snow seemed to fall too quietly, as if the city were holding its breath. Thor suddenly stiffened, ears pricking forward like antennas catching a silent signal. A deep rumble formed in his chest, a low warning sound that made Jack stop in his tracks. "Easy, boy," Jack muttered, though he already felt his stomach tighten. Thor didn't warn without reason. Jack lifted his flashlight slowly, sweeping its beam across the shadow-drenched alley. At first he saw nothing but dumpsters dusted with snow and the gleam of wet pavement. Then the beam caught a shape. No, two shapes. Collapsed near a stack of wooden pallets. Jack's pulse kicked harder. He stepped forward. What he saw snapped him back to Afghanistan in an instant. A woman lay half-crumpled on the concrete, rain-damp snow gathering around her hair. She looked young, mid-30s perhaps, yet her face carried the hardened alertness of someone trained to expect death at any second. She had sharp cheekbones, pale skin drained of blood, and dark brown hair pulled into a tight, tactical bun. Her uniform was unmistakable. Navy SEAL combat gear, soaked through and torn, the right shoulder stained with dark, spreading blood. This was no mugging victim. This was a soldier in trouble. "Damn," Jack whispered. He knelt beside her. Even unconscious, her posture was defensive, fists half-clenched, jaw set, muscles still braced for a fight she couldn't give. Her name tag, half hidden by blood, read Carter, Emily. Emily Carter, a SEAL, one of the very few women who'd ever earned the trident, and she was dying. But she wasn't alone. A German shepherd lay pressed against her side, a female with a swollen belly, clearly pregnant and in the late stages. Luna, Jack would learn later. Her coat was sable and beautiful even under the snow, but her breathing was shallow, rapid, protective. Her ribs moved visibly with each strained inhale. Some blood matted her flank too, though it looked like a graze, nothing compared to the wound on her human. Luna lifted her head weakly, meeting Jack's stare. Her eyes were golden, sharp, terrified, but burning with a loyalty Jack recognized instantly. A soldier's dog, a guardian. Thor stood rigid beside Jack, tail stiff, evaluating. Luna didn't growl. She simply watched, trembling, too exhausted to threaten, but too loyal to leave. Jack reached for Emily's neck, searching for a pulse. It flickered beneath his fingers, weak, but alive. "Hey," he whispered, "stay with me." As if his voice were a rope pulling her from deep water, Emily's eyelids fluttered. She inhaled sharply, a breath coated in pain. Her eyes snapped open, blue, fierce, scanning him in an instant. Her hand shot up, grabbing his wrist with surprising strength. "Don't call 911, she rasped. "Please, don't. National security. They'll find us." Jack froze. He knew that tone. The frantic, begging desperation of someone hunted by more than criminals. Someone hunted by people who knew how to find you. Someone running from a system instead of toward it. Her grip trembled, but her eyes never left his. "If you call, we die," she whispered. Jack's instincts warred inside him. The medic in him wanted an ambulance. The soldier in him recognized the haunted look, the look men had on the last night of an operation gone wrong. And the man inside him, he was simply tired of letting people die. "All right," he murmured. "I hear you." Emily's body sagged with relief, though her eyes remained wide with fear. Jack glanced at Luna again. The dog attempted to stand, but her legs buckled, belly heavy, breath quivering. Thor whined softly, a rare sound, stepping forward with unexpected gentleness. Jack took a breath so cold it felt like it cut his lungs. "Okay," he said aloud, to no one and everyone. "Okay. Guess I'm doing this." He slid his arms under Emily's shoulders and knees. She gasped from the pain, fingers clutching his coat, but she didn't fight him. Jack lifted her carefully. She was lighter than he expected, shock already stealing her strength. "I've got you," he whispered. He turned to Luna next. "Your turn, Mama." Luna struggled when he approached. One weak bark, protective, afraid. But Jack knelt and let her sniff him. Luna pressed her muzzle to his palm, just once as if granting permission. Then he scooped her up, feeling the weight of both her pregnancy and her trembling fear. Thor walked beside them, guarding. Snow whipped sideways now, wind howling like a warning. Jack carried Emily to his battered pickup truck, placing her in the passenger seat, while Thor climbed into the back seat, eyes locked on her like a sentinel. Then he laid Luna gently onto a blanket in the truck bed, her head resting on his arm until the last moment. When he closed the tailgate, Luna let out a soft whine, but Thor answered with a low, reassuring rumble. Jack climbed into the driver's seat, gripping the wheel as the snowstorm thickened around them. He glanced at Emily, pale, bleeding, but alive. "Hold on," he told her. "Whoever's after you, they'll have to go through me now." Emily's eyes flickered open. In the dimness, gratitude and fear tangled together. Jack threw the truck into gear. Engine growling, tires skidding over icy ground, they sped into the blinding winter night. One veteran, a wounded Navy SEAL, and 2 German shepherds bound by fate and desperation. And as the snow swallowed the road behind them, Jack Morgan knew one thing with absolute certainty. He had just stepped into someone else's war. Snow thickened along the winding mountain road as Jack Morgan guided the battered pickup through the dark forest, the headlights pushing weak yellow blades through the storm. The cabin appeared only when the truck rounded a sharp bend, a small wooden structure tucked beneath towering pines, its roof bowed under layers of snow, its windows dim and frosted like tired eyes watching the night. This place had once belonged to Jack's parents, a refuge they'd carved into the mountains decades ago. For Jack, it was more than a shelter. It was the last quiet corner of his life, the only place where memories softened instead of tightened around his throat. Inside, the cabin smelled of pine resin and old books. Jack kicked the door shut behind him, his boots knocking snow loose across the entryway. Thor bolted in first, circling the small living room with quick, patrolling movements, nose working overtime. Jack set Emily down gently on the old sofa, its leather cracked but warm, and she winced, biting her lip as the pain surged. Luna lay curled in Jack's arms, trembling in silence. He carried her to a pile of blankets near the fireplace before crouching beside her, brushing his thumb over her head. "You did good, girl," he murmured. Emily Carter watched through half-lidded eyes, her breath fogging lightly in the cold air. Without her gear and helmet, the details of her face stood out. The faint freckles across the bridge of her nose, the strong jawline, and the light scar running along her left cheek, a thin, pale reminder of some past operation. She looked like someone who had once carried confidence effortlessly, but now that confidence was drowned under exhaustion and fear. Jack moved with the efficiency of a man who had patched wounds in darker, dirtier places. He retrieved a first aid kit from a metal case near the kitchen, flipping it open on the coffee table. The kit was old, but meticulously maintained. Sterile gauze, sutures, forceps, pain meds he used for emergencies he hoped would never come. He cut away the torn sleeve of Emily's uniform, revealing her shoulder, muscled, trained, but soaked with blood and already swelling. "We need to get this bullet out," Jack said, his voice steady. "Sooner rather than later." Emily swallowed, her jaw tightening. "I've done worse," she muttered. There was a faint tremor in her voice, one she tried hard to hide. She hated appearing weak. That much Jack already understood. It was the kind of pride soldiers carried even when bleeding out. Jack nodded but didn't respond. He heated a metal tool over the fireplace until it glowed faintly, then let it cool to sterilize. His fingers were rough and calloused, but his movements carried the precision of training that never left him. As he cleaned the wound, Emily tensed, gripping the edge of the sofa until her knuckles whitened. "You breathe," Jack reminded her quietly. "In through the nose, out slow." She forced a smirk. "Bossy for a mechanic." "Ex-medic," he corrected. "I've seen a lot of nasty holes in people." "And patched them?" "Some." His eyes darkened briefly. "Not all." Emily looked at him, sensing the heaviness behind that answer, but too drained to ask. He worked quietly, locating the embedded bullet with steady hands, extracting it with a soft metallic clink into a metal tray. She shuddered at the pressure, but stayed silent. When he threaded the first suture, Luna whimpered weakly from the floor. Thor shifted closer, lying protectively beside her with an annoyed huff, because the pregnant newcomer had stolen half his blanket. Jack glanced at the two dogs, shaking his head. "This place was meant for a veteran and one dog," he grumbled. "Now it's turning into a special operations refugee camp." Emily chuckled softly, the sound quickly dissolving into a wince. "Sorry we're invading your quiet life." Jack didn't answer, but something softened in his expression. He taped the last of the bandage and sat back, wiping a bead of sweat from his brow despite the cold. Emily's breathing steadied, the harsh edge dulling under the pain medication he'd given her. Now that the immediate danger had eased, silence filled the cabin. A silence broken only by the crackling fire and Luna's soft panting. Snow tapped lightly against the windows like restless fingers. Jack sat across from Emily, studying her with the wary patience of a man who had trusted too quickly, too many times. "You said people were after you," he finally said. "I need to know who." Emily hesitated. Her eyes, still sharp even in exhaustion, flickered toward Luna, who lifted her head and pressed her muzzle gently against Emily's knee. The gesture seemed to push something loose inside her. "My team was SEAL Team 9, she began. "Black missions. Off-the-book stuff the public never hears about." Jack nodded slowly, watching her posture shift into that rigid, steel-coated calm that only soldiers wore when recounting trauma. "There's a man named Richard Cole," she continued. A defense contractor. To the world, he's a philanthropist. Clean, smiling, handshakes with senators. But he's been selling drone prototypes to armed groups overseas. Extremely advanced ones. Jack's jaw clenched. And you found proof. We did, Emily whispered. Or, we thought we did. Her breath hitched. Someone on our team leaked our location. Cole's people hit us before we even had a chance to transmit the data. They came with silencers, trackers, like they knew exactly when and where we'd be. My team, her voice cracked, the memory slicing open. My entire team was wiped out in minutes. Jack felt that familiar cold weight settle in his chest. Betrayal. Loss. He had known both. Too many times. And you and Luna were the only survivors. Emily nodded. She saved me. Warned me before the last man came up behind. Me. She swallowed hard. We ran. I had one contact left in Denver, someone I trusted. But Cole's men were already there. Jack leaned back, exhaling slowly. He stared into the fire, its orange glow reflecting in his eyes like fading embers of old battles. Betrayal's a nasty kind of war, he said quietly. People you trust cutting the ground from under you. I've been there. Emily studied him, not with suspicion this time, but with something closer to recognition. Jack rose and checked Luna again. The pregnant dog's breathing had steadied, though her belly rose visibly with each breath. Thor sat beside her, posture protective but slightly disgruntled, as if trying to accept that the cabin now held 2 soldiers, 1 pregnant dog, and a storm of secrets. Emily watched the scene, her eyelids drooping as exhaustion pulled on her. Why did you help us? She murmured. Jack didn't look at her. Instead, he adjusted the blanket around Luna and stoked the fire. Didn't feel like letting more people die tonight, he answered. Didn't feel right. Outside, the storm howled. Inside, the cabin hummed with fragile warmth. Emily slumped back against the sofa, her body finally allowing itself to rest. Jack stood guard near the fire, Thor at his feet. Luna curled nearby. For the first time in a long time, Jack Morgan didn't feel alone. And for the first time in days, Emily Carter felt safe enough to close her eyes. Morning crept slowly across the Rockies, bleeding pale gold through the frosted windows of the cabin. Snow still draped the mountains like a thick white quilt, but inside the quiet wooden walls, something warmer lingered. A fragile, makeshift sense of safety that felt almost unreal after the chaos that had delivered them here. For days, the cabin became both fortress and sanctuary, a place where 3 wounded lives, 1 man, 1 woman, and 1 pregnant dog, tried to remember how to breathe without fear. Jack Morgan threw himself into repairs as if survival depended on the rhythm of his hammer. At dawn, he trudged through knee-deep snow to mend the sagging fence that circled the small clearing around the cabin. His breath fogged in steady bursts, muscles working beneath his thick coat as he drove nails into splintered wood. Jack repaired everything: loose shingles, warped doors, the ancient generator in the shed. Anything to keep his hands busy. Anything to drown out the ghostly echoes of gunfire lodged deep in his memory. His face, always stern, seemed carved from granite during these tasks, focused, tight-jawed, determined. A man performing manual labor was easy to recognize. A man quietly outrunning trauma was harder to see. But the signs were there in the way Jack paused sometimes, staring at the snow as though waiting for something terrible to walk out of the woods. Thor remained his silent partner, patrolling the perimeter with military precision. The 5-year-old German shepherd had regained his full alertness, pacing back and forth, nose tilted to the wind. Occasionally, he shot suspicious glances at the tree line, where the forest lay too still. But inside the cabin, Thor's demeanor softened. He seemed undecided about Luna, sometimes protective, sometimes jealous, often begrudging in that way older dogs become when forced to share territory. Still, he tolerated her, curling beside her near the fireplace when she whimpered from pregnancy cramps. Emily Carter, her shoulder bound tightly with Jack's careful stitches, spent her mornings forcing her body to remember discipline. She was a woman built for motion, lean, rangy muscles, sharp reflexes, an athlete forged by years of punishing SEAL training. But now each movement came with a dull burn of healing tissue. Though Jack insisted she rest, Emily refused to sit idle. Each day, she stepped outside for short drills, controlled breathing, stance resetting, slow arm raises to test mobility. Her dark hair, usually secured in military fashion, was now hastily tied back, strands escaping to frame a face worn by exhaustion, yet lit by a simmering determination. And every time she limped back inside, she muttered the same line beneath her breath. "I survived ambushes. I can survive this damn shoulder." When Jack reminded her to take her pain meds, she would roll her eyes dramatically. "Amazing," she'd say, her tone dry. "I'm a Navy SEAL being nanny-managed by a guy in a green coat who thinks black coffee counts as breakfast." Jack would grunt without looking up. Emily found this endlessly amusing. Luna, meanwhile, stationed herself as guardian of the kitchen, or more specifically, guardian of whatever food Jack opened. The pregnant shepherd, her belly round and swaying like a heavy fruit, had decided that warmth and proximity to supplies outranked dignity. She would curl near the wood stove, eyes tracking Jack with unwavering intensity whenever he chopped ingredients or reheated meals. Thor watched her with the disdain of someone forced to accept that a newcomer had claimed the warmest spot in the room. Yet laughter sometimes punctured the cabin's tense atmosphere. Once Emily caught Luna and Thor engaged in a slow-motion shuffle for dominance over the closest spot to the fire. Thor nudging forward inch by inch, Luna responding by simply rolling her large belly onto his paw. Thor froze, horrified, as if betrayed. Emily's laugh echoed through the cabin, surprising even herself with how natural it sounded. At night, the fire became their gathering place. Jack sat in his father's old chair, hands wrapped around a mug of lukewarm tea he never quite finished. Emily leaned back on the sofa, shoulder cushioned by blankets, Luna snoring softly at her feet. The firelight flickered across their faces, softening them. In that quiet glow, stories surfaced, old hurts rising from the dark like submerged logs. Jack spoke first one night, voice low and gravelly. "We were pinned down outside Kunduz, dust everywhere, couldn't see more than a foot. I made it home, but parts of me stayed behind." He tapped his temple lightly. "Echoes don't go away. Not really." Emily listened without interrupting. She knew better than to offer sympathy. That only made wounds ache deeper. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady. "My first deployment at sea, 3 months straight. You stare at the water long enough, you start seeing the world differently. Out there, feelings get in the way. You learn to switch them off." She looked at the fire. "Eventually, you forget how to switch them back on." They shared something in that moment. An understanding without pity. The kind that only people who'd lived through controlled chaos could grasp. Both of them found the silence of normal life unbearable. Both felt more themselves in danger than in calm. But danger hadn't forgotten them. On the third day, Jack slipped outside with a prepaid phone. He made his way to the far edge of the clearing, where reception sometimes worked. The wind hissed through the trees as he dialed the only number Emily said might help. Chief Benjamin Harris answered on the third ring. The man was in his late 50s, tall and iron-backed, with a deep voice shaped by decades of command. His salt and pepper beard gave him a stern, weathered appearance, but his loyalty was legendary among the teams. Harris didn't waste words. "Jack, you with her?" "She's alive," Jack said. Barely. And Cole's men? Hunting. Jack scanned the trees. We need extraction. Harris exhaled sharply, a sound of frustration rather than surprise. I'll try, but I need time. I need a team outside Cole's reach. You hold that mountain, Morgan. Don't let anyone get near her. Jack agreed, though a knot formed in his stomach. Time was something he didn't trust. Back at the cabin, the storm of secrets collided with a storm of biology. Luna suddenly yelped, paws shifting restlessly, body tensing. Emily's eyes widened. She's going into labor. Jack fetched more towels, more blankets. Emily dropped to her knees beside Luna, hands trembling though she tried to hide it. It's okay, girl. I'm here. The seal who had once stormed compounds with night vision goggles now found herself panicking over a birthing dog. Jack held a lantern steady, Thor guarding the doorway like a soldier assigned to perimeter duty. Luna strained, whined, breathed heavily. The storm outside intensified, wind battering the cabin walls. After agonizing minutes, the first pup arrived. Small, slick, blind, mewling softly. Emily lifted it carefully, her military steel melting into pure instinct. Good girl, Luna. Good girl. More pups followed, tiny, squirming bundles of fragile life. Jack never thought he'd witness something like this again. Not after years of running from anything that made him feel too much. Yet as each pup found its way to Luna's belly, something inside him eased, if only slightly. Outside, the world was preparing for war. Inside, new life warmed the room, and as the firelight danced across their tired faces, Jack Morgan realized this wasn't just a mission anymore. This was a pack. The storm rolled in with a suffocating heaviness, turning the sky above the Rockies into a single slab of charcoal darkness. Snow whipped sideways, carried by violent gusts that rattled the cabin's wooden frame. Jack Morgan felt something shift, a tension in the air, a wrongness he could sense in his bones before any threat revealed itself. Thor sensed it too. The German shepherd's deep growl vibrated across the cabin floor as he stared toward the forest, his ears high and rigid, his body locked in predatory readiness. Jack moved to the window just as faint beams of light flickered below the mountain. Headlights. 2 vehicles, maybe 3, slowing at the sharp bend where the road met the narrow trail leading toward his cabin. He closed his eyes for half a second, inhaling through clenched teeth. So Harris hadn't exaggerated the danger. Richard Cole had decided to finish the job. Inside the cabin, Emily Carter pushed herself to her feet. She was pale, but her training carved through the haze of pain. She had braided her dark hair back to keep it out of her line of sight. Those strained movements made her grimace. Her shoulder, still stiff from Jack's stitches, throbbed under the stress. But her eyes were sharp, alert, alive with the old instinct that had kept her breathing through ambushes worse than this one. Jack grabbed the lantern, switched it off, and whispered, "They're here." The power died an instant later, plunging the cabin into a suffocating blackness. Not a flicker, not a surge, just a clean, deliberate cut. Someone had taken out the lines. They were coordinated, professional. Then came the sounds, a window shattering in the kitchen, boots crunching snow behind the house, the harsh thud of the back door being kicked open. Jack reacted with the cold efficiency of experience. He shoved Emily behind the nearest storage shelf, then guided Thor and Luna into the shadowed corner of the room. Luna stood with her belly swollen and heavy, trembling but growling, a low, wavering sound. The pups had been born only yesterday, tiny blind creatures now hidden in a basket Jack had insulated with blankets. But tonight, instinct, not motherhood, dominated Luna's gaze. Jack shoved a handgun into Emily's hand. "You might still be Seal, but tonight you're also family," he whispered. "Anyone touches this door, you fire." Emily didn't argue. She took the pistol with her good hand, her breath shaking but her jaw set. The mercenaries entered without speaking. There were at least 4 from the sound of their footsteps. One of them, closest to the kitchen, spoke in a clipped tone. Male, mid-30s, with the accent of someone who'd worked overseas too long. His silhouette appeared briefly in the doorway, revealing a tall frame, buzz-cut blonde hair, and a tactical vest. His face was hard, angular, scarred beneath the left eye, likely from shrapnel. This was Miles Renner, one of Cole's hired commanders, known for his ruthlessness and efficiency. Renner raised a finger, signaling his men to spread out. They moved through the cabin like shadows. Jack slipped behind the nearest support beam and struck fast. A single blow with the butt of his rifle cracked against the jaw of the closest intruder. An athletic man with copper skin, sharp cheekbones, and tattoos lining his neck. The man dropped, but the noise gave Jack away. Gunfire split the quiet, bullets tearing into the wooden walls as Jack rolled behind a dresser for cover. Emily fired 3 shots toward the back hallway. One mercenary grunted and stumbled, but didn't fall. Another one attempted to flank them from outside. Thor launched himself through the broken window with stunning speed, hitting the man full force. The mercenary cursed, losing his grip on the rifle as Thor clamped teeth around his forearm. Emily pulled Luna back as glass fell around them, shielding the pregnant dog with her own body. Renner barked orders, cold, controlled, confident. Sweep left. He won't stay in one place. Watch the tree line. Jack's training kicked in. He grabbed Emily by the arm. We're leaving. They're too many. They bolted through the side door into the blinding snow. The world outside was a white blur, wind cutting like knives across their skin. Thor bounded beside them, blood on his muzzle, but alive. Jack led them up the slope behind the cabin, a narrow path he'd memorized since childhood. The rocks were slick with snow, but he climbed with familiarity, using handholds hidden beneath drifts. Emily followed, teeth clenched against the pain tearing through her shoulder. Luna struggled, belly swaying as she trudged up the incline, but she kept going. Thor stayed below her, nudging her flank when she faltered. Gunfire erupted from below, chasing them into the forest. Jack stopped behind a fallen pine, motioning Emily lower. He pressed his back to the trunk and whispered, "They'll try to circle left. I'll stop them." One mercenary broke through the brush on the ridge. Thor saw him first. The dog launched, slamming into the man's arm just as he raised his weapon. The mercenary cried out, his rifle skidding across the snow. Jack fired one precise shot, ending the threat. They ran again, lungs burning, snow blinding. Emily staggered once, catching herself against Jack's shoulder. "I'm fine," she hissed, even though she wasn't. Just when the group seemed cornered, trees thinning, cliffs rising around them, an unfamiliar roar shook the air. A low thunder rolled across the mountains. Spotlights sliced through the darkness, sweeping across the treetops. A helicopter. Not Cole's, not hostile. A voice boomed from the sky through a loudspeaker, authoritative and resonant. "This is the United States Navy. Drop your weapons immediately." Jack recognized the tone instantly. Chief Harris. "Nobody waits 24 hours, Harris had once told him. Especially not stubborn soldiers. Rappelling lines dropped from the helicopter. A team of Navy operators descended, black silhouettes with synchronized precision. Renner and his surviving men scrambled for cover, but were instantly overwhelmed, pinned to the ground and disarmed. The forest fell silent, except for the helicopter rotors and the wind. Jack collapsed into the snow, muscles quivering from adrenaline. Emily dropped beside him, breath fogging heavily. Thor pressed close, and Luna, exhausted but alive, leaned against Jack's knee. He wrapped an arm around all of them, pulling them close in the freezing air. For a moment, they were not hunted. They were not soldiers. They were simply a pack that had survived the storm. Spring crept slowly through the Rockies, softening the edges of the land that winter had nearly broken. Where months ago snow hammered against windows, and danger lurked beneath every shadow. The mountains now shimmered with newborn green, pine tips bright as candle flames, streams thawing into silver threads, the world stretching awake after holding its breath too long. Jack Morgan stood on the cabin's porch, hands resting on the new wooden railing he had built himself. The wood was pale and sturdy, sanded smooth, a far cry from the battered boards that once creaked under the weight of fear. He wore his usual green jacket, though it looked almost out of place now, contrasting with the gentle warmth of spring. His face carried fewer storms than before. The lines around his eyes were softer, the perpetual tension in his jaw gone. Months had carved him into a quieter man, not healed, but healing. Inside, Emily Carter knelt near the small garden bed she had insisted on planting beside the porch. She wore a faded navy blue sweatshirt and cargo pants, her dark hair tied into a loose ponytail that kept falling over her cheek. Her skin, sun-touched again after weeks indoors, seemed to glow under the afternoon light. She was still athletic, compact, built from years of special operations training, but now her shoulders no longer held the weight of imminent threat. She had the look of someone who had spent her life preparing to die, and had only recently learned she was allowed to live instead. Emily was laughing quietly to herself as she teased a stubborn weed out of the soil. "Can't believe this," she muttered. "A Navy SEAL planting marigolds. If my old instructor saw me right now, he'd make me run laps until the next century." Jack chuckled from the porch. "You're doing pretty well for someone who once said she didn't trust anything that couldn't be used as a weapon." Emily looked up, grinning. "Who says these aren't weapons? You haven't seen what angry bees can do around flowers." Around them, the dogs wandered like furry guardians of this fragile peace. Thor, now 3 years old, broad-shouldered and muscular with thick sable fur, lay stretched on the top step, pretending to keep watch. He had grown even more protective since the siege, his scars hidden beneath his coat, but his loyalty unmistakable. When Luna appeared with her senses sharpened, Thor had taken it upon himself to be her shadow. Luna, the pregnant German shepherd rescued on that first night, had transformed in the months since. Her coat was glossy again, her eyes bright amber full of confidence. She had delivered a litter of 6 puppies, tiny fuzzballs of tan, black, and cream, each with their own squeaks and personalities. Luna now watched them from the base of the porch as they tumbled in the grass, wrestling like clumsy warriors in training. Thor pretended not to care, though he frequently nudged a wandering pup back into the circle of play with exaggerated annoyance, tail wagging just enough to give him away. Jack watched them with a smile that came more easily now. His life had been carved by loss, friends left behind in dusty deserts, memories buried under discipline. But the cabin no longer felt like a bunker built to keep the world out. Under Emily's influence, it was becoming something else. Something dangerously close to home. In the distance, a news bulletin on Jack's radio crackled faintly with updates about Richard Cole's conviction. The once untouchable business magnate was now awaiting sentencing for arms trafficking, conspiracy, and orchestrating an attack against U.S. military personnel. Evidence recovered from Emily's encrypted files had been enough to erase every doubt about her innocence. She could return to the Navy if she wanted. Harris had said as much during his last visit. But Emily had only shaken her head and said, "I've spent years in shadows. I want to see sunlight for once." Now she dusted dirt from her hands and walked toward Jack, wiping her brow with the back of her wrist. He watched her approach with that quiet admiration he tried not to let show too easily. She stopped next to him, leaning on the railing he built. "Not bad work, Morgan. You sure you weren't a carpenter before the army?" "Never too late to pick up a trade," he answered. This place needed something to hold on to. Emily looked around. The flowers, the repaired cabin walls, the extra firewood stacked neatly by the side door, the puppies tumbling through the grass. "Looks like it found something," she whispered. A soft breeze swept across the porch, carrying the scent of wet pine and warm earth. Jack stepped off the porch and called the dogs over. They trotted toward him. Thor steady as a mountain, Luna gentle and patient, the 6 pups bouncing like furry springs. He knelt and reached into his pocket, pulling out a collar. It was a beautiful handcrafted piece of thick brown leather with a polished silver tag. Jack held it up so it caught the pink-gold shimmer of sunset. The engraving read, Jack, Emily, Thor, Luna, and pups. Below it was the new phone number for the cabin's landline. He turned to Emily, cheeks warming slightly under his rugged stubble. "I'm not great with fancy speeches," he said. "But if naming a pack makes it real, then you're part of ours, Emily." She stared at him, lips trembling with a smile she tried to suppress. "I'm terrible at being normal," she whispered. "But if normal means this, flowers, barking chaos, and a stubborn old soldier, then yeah, I'll stay." Jack fastened the collar around Luna's neck. The mother dog stood proudly, tail wagging like she understood the weight of the moment. Thor sat beside her, chest puffed as if accepting his new role as veteran guardian of the family. The puppies gathered around them like small beating hearts. The sunset poured soft colors across the Chianti mountains. Emily sat beside Jack on the porch steps, their shoulders touching. Thor lay across the threshold like a sentry god carved of fur and loyalty. Luna curled nearby, the pups forming a warm pile against her flank. For a long moment, no one spoke. There was only the whisper of the wind through the pines, the soft padding of tiny paws on wood, and the steady, undeniable rhythm of a new pack breathing in unison. Born from war, found in snow, and held together under the gentle promise of melting spring. In the soft quiet of that mountain sunset, one truth lingered in the air. God's miracles rarely arrive with thunder, but with small, unexpected mercies. A wounded Navy SEAL found in the snow, a loyal dog who refused to give up, a veteran brave enough to stop, and a new family formed in the cold. Life breaks all of us in ways we never saw coming. Yet somehow, in those broken places, God begins weaving new beginnings. Maybe you, watching this right now, are carrying battles no one else can see. Maybe you're waiting for a sign that hope still exists. If this story reached you today, let it remind you that you are not forgotten, not alone, and that God still works quietly in the background, healing what has been wounded, guiding you to the people who will become your pack. Before you leave, share this story with someone who needs a little light tonight. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments. And if it touched your heart, please subscribe for more stories of faith, courage, and the bonds that never break. May God bless you, protect your home, bring peace to your spirit, and be your shelter in every storm. Amen.